The world seemed to hold its breath the moment she whispered those words. It was a languid Sunday afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Colorado. Sunlight spilling gold and warm across the small wooden gate where Mason stood, rooted to the spot. His heartbeat, a deep, resonant drum against his ribs, echoed in his ears as he gazed at Claire, the woman who had, impossibly, walked back into his life after 2 long years of silence. Her eyes, usually so vibrant, now held something deeper than fear, a shimmering vulnerability, a tender tremor that caught in his own throat. And when she said, "I want your baby," it was as if the very ground beneath him tilted, irrevocably shifting his world. His past, a tangled knot of regrets and long-buried hope, rose all at once, demanding to be acknowledged. It was the kind of moment that cleaved a life into a stark before and after, a silent promise whispered on the wind. Mason had not always lived with loneliness stitched into the corners of his life. There was a time when laughter had been the very fabric of his home, when dreams were clear and the future seemed to stretch out, generous and bright. But after losing his mother to cancer and then watching Claire, his closest friend, the woman who had understood him better than anyone, simply vanish without explanation, he had slowly, meticulously, built walls around his heart. His life became a quiet dedication to routine. Days at the auto garage, nights in front of old movies, mornings spent feeding the stray cats that wandered near his porch. Predictable, quiet, safe. But life, as he was learning, rarely stayed within the neat lines one drew. Claire's return had been a shock, a profound reawakening that stole his breath. She stood gripping the old wooden gate, her white shirt luminous in the gentle light, her face a canvas of exhaustion and courage. She didn't look like the carefree, impulsive girl he once knew. She looked like someone who had wrestled with shadows, fought battles unseen. As she stepped inside, a tide of memories rushed back, overwhelming him with their vividness. Nights when their voices, soft and low, had stretched into the early hours, talking until the sunrise painted the sky. Afternoons spent in easy laughter, their bodies close, their joy unburdened. And that one late autumn moment, a brush of hands, a lingering gaze, when the unspoken had trembled between them. A fragile, exquisite thing, only to be swallowed by fear. They had shared something real, something delicate, something profoundly unfinished, but nothing, absolutely nothing, explained why she had left. They stood in the yard for a long, quiet moment, the air thick with unspoken questions, a palpable weight. Mason's gaze lingered on her hands, noticing their slight tremor, the way she swallowed hard, as if bracing herself. She told him she had come because she had run out of places to be strong, because the people she once trusted had abandoned her, because life had pinned her into corners she never saw coming. Her confession was a raw, aching unraveling. She had left 2 years ago because she discovered she was pregnant, a truth that had shattered her unprepared heart. The father, someone she had believed in, had walked away, leaving her heartbroken and terrified, ashamed and utterly alone. She had fled town, cutting off everyone, even Mason, the one person who would have stood by her through anything. Her voice cracked, a fragile sound, as she recounted losing the baby in her 7th month due to complications. The grief a silent, devouring beast that had swallowed her whole. Mason listened, his chest a tight knot of ache with every word. He couldn't begin to fathom the depth of her pain, the drowning loneliness, the crushing weight of guilt she must have carried. There were moments when he wanted to reach out, to interrupt, to pull her into his arms, tears stinging his own eyes. But he stayed silent, a steady presence, letting her empty every last corner of her heart. It wasn't until she spoke the words again, softly, trembling, that everything within him shifted. "I want your baby." Or, not because she wanted to replace the child she'd lost, not because she needed someone to save her, but because Mason was the only man she had ever truly trusted, the only one who had made her feel seen, safe, and loved, without ever asking for anything in return. She hadn't come with expectations, only with a truth, raw and unpolished, that laid itself bare between them. Mason took a slow, deep breath, feeling a familiar weight lift from his shoulders, even as another, different kind, settled into his heart. He had spent years consumed by the mystery of her vanishing, tormented by what he might have done wrong, why love always seemed to leave him behind. But now, seeing her pain, her scars, her quiet, fierce courage. He understood this moment wasn't about him, it was about two broken people whose paths he had, by some tender twist of fate, converged again, exactly when their hearts were most desperately in need of healing. They moved to the porch, sitting in a comfortable silence as the wind rustled through the trees, a soft sigh. He watched her stare at her hands as if expecting him to turn away, to reject the impossible request. But instead, he reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate bones of her wrist before gently taking her hands in his. Her breath hitched, a soft, startled sound. She hadn't expected kindness after so much hurt, so much solitude. She hadn't expected acceptance, but she had forgotten one thing. Mason had always loved quietly, deeply, without conditions. He confessed that his life had never truly moved forward since she left, not because he couldn't, but because he hadn't wanted to fill a space that she had once occupied so naturally, so completely. Hearing her ask him for something so intimate, so life-changing, wasn't terrifying. It felt, instead, like fate offering them a second chance. A chance to create something real, something lasting, something built not from desperation, but from the slow, tender work of healing. He told her his life had just changed forever, not because she wanted a baby, but because her return had quietly, powerfully opened a door in his heart he thought was locked for good. He didn't see her request as a burden. He saw it as a turning point, a moment where two wounded souls could, at long last, truly begin again. Over the next weeks, Claire stayed in the small guest room within his cozy home, a gentle presence filling the quiet spaces. They talked for hours each night, the unspoken words of 2 years finally finding their way into the soft intimacy of shared whispers. They walked through the neighborhood, sometimes, without realizing it, their hands finding each other, a warm, comforting contact. Slowly, tentatively, Claire began to smile again, a fragile bloom. Mason, in turn, began to live again, a quiet light returning to his eyes. They didn't rush into anything. Their intimacy was a slow, deliberate dance of trust and tenderness. They sought counseling together, meticulously discussing future plans, their deepest fears, and how to build a foundation strong enough for the family she hoped for. Mason realized he wasn't just ready for fatherhood. He was ready for a life where love didn't hide in the shadows, a life where vulnerability was a strength. Claire, too, came to a profound understanding. She wasn't asking for a baby out of grief. She was asking out of love, out of an unwavering trust, out of hope for a future with a man who had never abandoned her heart, even when she had, in her pain, abandoned his. Their journey wasn't without its shadows. There were nights when her past trauma resurfaced, a cold hand on her heart, and Mason would simply sit beside her, his warmth a silent anchor, his steady presence a balm. Mornings when Mason worried if he was truly enough, if he could truly rise to meet this profound request. Days when uncertainty clouded their vision, but they walked through each moment together, slowly, gently, bravely, their unspoken connection deepening with every shared breath. Months passed, and one crisp winter morning, Claire walked out of the bathroom, holding a small pregnancy test, her hands trembling. Mason looked into her tear-filled eyes and understood instantly, a quiet joy blooming in his chest. She nodded, unable to speak, the tears now flowing freely. He pulled her into his arms, her body soft and yielding against his, and she cried, not with fear this time, but with a profound, aching gratitude, because she wasn't alone. They would face this together, every tear, every joy, every uncertain chapter. And for the first time in his life, Mason felt a kind of fulfillment that didn't depend on perfection, only on love, on faith, and on two hearts, finally, truly, healing side by side.